Hey everybody, it is Friday. November 20th, 2020. So, excuse me while I adjust my chair. It was too far back. What a lot of news. Let's see, I've got to pull up a whole bunch of stuff here. So I thought I'd start by giving you, hi Jim. I hope you're right, Jim. Some ideas of what to pray for. Let's be praying for election integrity. It's not over yet. And we're going to talk about the reaction of the news in just a minute. We need to thank God for the uncovering of election corruption and pray for the legal teams, for President Trump and the others that are involved in all that's going on with the contesting of the races. You know, I was struck today with the importance of praying for the courts, because when I hear what the news is doing, when I see, I watched the end of the Pennsylvania delegation of legislators with a press conference. The lies that they want to put out, the lies they expect us to believe, you know, it dawned on me, we have to be praying for the courts who are going to hear the cases. Now, that I think Trump's team only has 3 cases going right now. There are over 100 cases going, but the others are by private people. For example, Lynn Wood in Georgia. I think that's a private case, not part of Trump's team. So we need to be praying for an honest presentation of facts. Pray that the Constitution will be upheld, and that party politics will be set aside. People shouldn't be ruling on these cases just because of politics. And pray for wisdom and strategies from heaven for those that are presenting the cases when they have honest information to present, that they would be very wise in what they say. I was appalled at what a friend of mine in the United Kingdom, I just saw a sign. Guess whose son is on the Ukraine board with Hunter Biden? Paul Pelosi, Nancy's son. I guess we've talked about that before. So Mark Sutherland he has been a speaker at Hear the Watchman. I have met him, impressed with him. He's done a lot to share truth, both on Facebook, on his own YouTube broadcasts, and so on. And he's keeping us abreast of what's going on in England with their lockdown and their reactions to the U.S. So he said the BBC News yesterday reported the Trump legal team's massive and extensive and highly credible allegations of voter fraud. BBC called it far-fetched without any evidence. Now, how many other people are using the terms far-fetched with no evidence? I hear a lot of times, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. Well, I read somewhere else that they cannot present evidence to the public, because then that is going to color the lawsuits. So they have to keep the evidence private until they go into court. After they've taken it into court and presented it, then they can reveal it to the public. All they can say right now is we have incredible evidence. So the BBC ran a patronizing, semi-mocking report presenting it as a circus of desperate cranks. So Mark says, unlike most of the BBC's gullible viewers, I actually had just watched the hour-long Trump press team conference, which was utterly compelling, highly serious, referencing literally hundreds of sworn statements of the most serious and astonishing voter fraud and election fraud. Remember, folks, voter fraud is what people do. That voter fraud has to do with the ballots. Election fraud has to do with the machines and how things are counted. Yeah, you know, people are just spitting out what they hear. We're going to talk about that in a minute because Larry had so much to say on this. This is one of the most stunning and bombshell stories in modern political history, and the BBC point blank refused to show it that way. So Mark says, we're in a time now where the media redacts reality to its own end. Ever since the election, the media appear to have put a kind of blackout on any of the actualities of the Trump challenge and seem to have no intention of changing. He says, this is something Larry would say, okay? This is Mark Sutherland saying it, but it just sounds like something Larry would say. You could get an interview with Kamala or Pelosi now in tears, confessing publicly that they can no longer bear the guilt of winning a stolen election, and yet the media would still report that Biden won. You know, even if Kamala or Pelosi were claiming this all was a hoax, it was all stolen, people would still say that Biden won. They've chosen their course. They are willfully lying and distorting reality that they are determined to do, and they are determined to delude the people. The BBC, the British media, and of course we know here, they're corrupt and highly dangerous. So that's Mark Sutherland's opinion, but I concur because remember, Larry told us that he had said that if you keep telling the people lies over and over again, remember Hitler's henchman said, if you tell a lie big enough and often enough, you can get people to believe anything. So the bigger you make it, the more often you tell it. That's what they want to do. Yes, I did see that. Obviously, Tucker is trying. My opinion is that he is trying to hang on to his job at Fox rather than leaving. And so he's backpedaling. And I didn't appreciate what I saw that he had said about Sidney Powell. The legal team with Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Ellis. I think her name Jenna Ellis, the blonde lawyer for the Trump team. What they had to say was incredibly compelling. And the way the press, I agree with you, Pam, the way the press screamed at them afterwards, asking questions, but then they wouldn't even report what was told to them. Josephine, what we're telling you is that the legal team yesterday had a press conference, said they have compelling evidence to show that this election was stolen because Trump got at least 74 million votes, more than any president had ever gotten. They have proof that the evidence that the machines flipped it. They're talking about Smartmatic. They're talking about Dominion, which is an overarching company. Smartmatic is the software company that was designed to keep the communists Chavez and Maduro in office in Venezuela. And it has been used by the CIA, I understand, the CIA and others, and they're using it here. And that is actually why Obama won, was because they were flipping votes. But the numbers of votes by the Republicans was small enough in 2012 that whichever year it was against McCain, that the Republican numbers were small enough that they could hide it and get away with it. The reason it became obvious this time, for one thing, we saw it on CNN actually happen. It only happened for a split second, but yes, Mimi, it is what they did is illegal. So we saw on CNN that they had so many votes for Trump, so many votes for Biden. And in a split second, those numbers changed. And so 6,000 votes that Trump had are suddenly on Biden's numbers and taken away from Trump. We saw it. They said, we're getting an update from the machine right now. And that's what it did. Now the press, you're talking about the press conference about drug price lowering, Pam. That's when I started here, it was still going on. The reporters have gotten so aggressive, and there's just such a lack of civility. And I think I think what I saw Kayleigh McEnany doing this morning is what needs to be done. You don't call on somebody unless they raise their hand and they act polite and civil. They have got to stop allowing people to scream at them. They have to stop it. You know, you got to treat them like children and talk to them like children if they act like children. That's appropriate. So Larry said the brainwashing actually can happen in only 2 weeks. If you tell a big enough lie and say it often enough, it only takes 2 weeks. Just like the thing with the masks. It doesn't matter how much proof comes out that masks don't work. People are not going to stop wearing them because they've been told for so long they have to, that they just can't wrap their head around that for one thing, they can't wrap their head around that they believed a lie. And for another thing, they've heard it so often that it's really hard for them to change their thinking. That's just using the mask as an example. But people who are convinced will refuse evidence because they have believed the lie. So remember, Larry has said that most people get their news only from the 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock news. And, so how we can't expect them to believe anything else if that's all they will look at. I got a call today from somebody who has a friend who only listens to the mainstream media, is sure that they're telling the truth. And okay, so she said, I thought my friend had a brain. Even very smart people are being completely deceived by all of that. Yeah, I saw that, Diane. That was ridiculous. Now, remember, Larry told us in July, the second week of July 2016, before he even got the nomination to be the presidential candidate 4 years ago, Larry said that they would have to do a coup against him. And there are two kinds of coups. One is the military coup, where you see the tanks coming down the street and we have a military takeover. The other kind of coup is a soft coup, which is what we've been in for 4 years. That's where the media spreads lies and people believe the lies. So court-listener.com/docket/186-32787/Wood-V-Raffensperger, Raffensperger. Is that Lynn Wood's case in Georgia, Big? Sounds like it. This morning, the legislators of Pennsylvania tried to have a meeting with Dominion to ask some questions, and the executives that were there walked out and refused to have a discussion. And then, of course, the Pennsylvania legislators came out and held a press conference about it afterwards. I got I'm looking it up. Hang on a sec. I got another text message this morning that I thought was pretty interesting. So we need to be very much, thank you, Josephine. When my friend was talking to me this morning about what was going on, I mean, she was really, really upset. But remember, I got a phone call with somebody screamed in my ear for 15 minutes because she's a proud liberal Democrat and sure that Trump is the liar and so on. And remember the scripture verse, I think it's Proverbs 24:1. I'm not sure if that's 25:1, it's somewhere in the 20s. And I think it's verse 1 where it says, a soft answer turns away wrath. So when this person was screaming at me on the phone, I just stayed quiet. Just let this person rail until they had worn themselves out and had finally exhausted themselves with what they were trying to say. So let's see. Here we go. Here's something else I got. I have to pull my phone a little close. Forgive me, I have to turn my head because my phone's on the charger. This is somebody, Patrick Colbeck, said a daily reminder, Joe Biden is not the president-elect. If you were disheartened by Tucker Carlson's apparent dismissal of Sidney Powell's statements yesterday, let me share some insights. Many of you may recall the recent opinion issued by Wayne County Judge Kenney regarding a lawsuit introduced by the Great Lakes Justice Center. See, that's not Trump's team, that's another one. In Judge Kenney's opinion, he dismissed my affidavit on the basis of statements I made regarding election fraud prior to the election. In essence, he concluded that as a certified poll challenger, I was not a qualified witness because I found evidence of voter fraud, which he believes I was predisposed to find because he'd been talking about the expectation of it. The purpose of a poll challenger is to ensure that fraud is not perpetrated. If Sidney Powell were to have shared her evidence with Tucker Carlson or made public statements specific to the fraud she has identified, a judge with the irrational perspective of Judge Kenney could similarly dismiss her evidence, and we can't afford to let this happen. So sit tight. So we have to be... Kelly, I'm sorry you've had the same situation. Well, at least it was only 30 seconds. Now, I may not have been listening to screaming for 15 minutes. It certainly felt like it. And we do, Pam, have dominion over the evil ones. God has dominion over the evil ones, and we have authority to take dominion as well under the blood of Jesus. So listen, folks, I woke up at 2:00 in the morning. And I was so startled by this two sentences that I woke up with. I had to get up and write it down. So this is what I wrote down at 2:00 this morning. We are in the fight of our lives. We cannot let Satan win. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it was something that had been playing as I fell asleep because I'd been listening to something or not, but it is true. Remember, we are in the fight of our lives and we cannot let Satan win. This is not just about an election. This is about the people who follow, here goes my back again. The people who follow Lucifer and Satan and want the Antichrist system to come in, whether they know it's the Antichrist system or they just want the global one world order. People have been duped. You know, if the media thinks that they are going to be players in the New World Order, they're wrong. Because Hitler used the media, and as soon as he came into power, the media worked, and they replaced him with somebody else. So we have to be praying that we have a judicial system still left that will act according to law and the Constitution. We have to be praying about that. And I appreciate that they are trying to impeach Governor Whitmer of Michigan. That is the appropriate thing to do. We've got to be holding our governors to account here. And my governor is going to be speaking in 12 minutes. And so I'm not going to stay on here very long because I want to hear what he has to say. So remember Chuck Colson said we're expected to tolerate everyone and everything else, but we are not going to be tolerated. So this whole idea of tolerance, I could see his face. There was somebody else who talked about this. I can't remember. Tolerance has been redefined, and tolerance is only tolerance if you accept their way. And that is not what tolerance is, because they expect us to be, but they do not give it back. And I have discussions with people who are screaming at me because they want to say their piece. And when they get done, I say, now, may I say something? Okay, hurry up. I can't handle much. It's like, come on, you expect me to listen to you. Then you, therefore, have got to give me the chance to say what's important to me. That's only fair. The Republicans blocked the recall of Whitmer. Well, that shows what rhinos they are. They want the New World Order too, don't they? You know? Thank God for the number of people who believe in Jesus Christ, who are working with President Trump. We need even more, but thank God for the few who are there, and we need to pray for them to continue to stand strong. 2 Timothy 3:1 says, "Know this, in the last days, perilous times will come." Now we know these perilous times are hard to deal with. They're difficult, they're dangerous, they're stressful, they bring hardship, they reduce our strength. But remember Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we don't give up. So take authority over evil. Mimi, you're right. Larry said that all the time. Who are you going to call? If something goes wrong, who are you going to call? Because they have so captured our judicial system. But Larry told us very often that the only one standing between us and communism was President Trump. That is why they are so aggressively trying to make sure that he can't stay in for another 4 years, because there are things he can and has planned to do in his second term that he could not do in his first term. So we need to get tough, or as Larry's wife says, suck it up, buttercup. We need to put on the full armor of God, which is Ephesians 6, and fight the good fight of faith, which is 1 Timothy 6:12. Fight the good fight of faith. 1 Timothy 6:11 says, pursue righteousness. And remember, righteousness is what protects our heart in the armor of God. It's the breastplate that goes over to protect our heart and our vital organs, our heart and lungs, so we can breathe and we can, pump blood throughout our bodies. So righteousness is what is the breastplate to protect us. So 1 Timothy 6:11 says, pursue righteousness, godliness, faith. We have to keep hanging on to faith, God. Folks, don't give up. Love, endurance, and gentleness. 1 Timothy 6:17 says, hope in God. Our hope is not in the government. Our hope is not in these machines. Our hope is in God. 1 Timothy 6:18 says, and 19 says, do good, be generous, be willing to share. And when I read that this morning, I teared up, folks, because I think about how generous you all were to keep Larry alive as long as we did. And I can't thank you enough for doing that. We did that for the sake of our own families, because we recognized the access he had to make a difference, and he did. Stop that, Mimi. I don't agree with that one bit yet. After 4 more years, not yet. In this way, by doing good and being generous, in this way, you lay up treasure in heaven as a firm foundation for the coming age. Our treasure that we lay up by our generosity, we're storing up treasure in heaven. Jesus mentioned that in his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6:19-21. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust cannot destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I had a pastor in Virginia that used to say, show me your checkbook and I'll tell you where your heart is. And I that always caught my attention. I was going to read something out of Hebrews 12, verses 12-14. Strengthen your feeble arms and your weak knees. Make level paths for your feet so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather be healed. Make every effort to live in peace with all men and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will be able to see God. So, yes, we are supposed to seek peace and pursue it. We're absolutely in a spiritual war, but seeking peace with everybody does not mean you tolerate their evil. We don't accept it. We don't accept. What don't you get, Diane? I'll wait for you. You know, it's interesting. I was trying to read. I kept getting interrupted, so I had to give up. First Samuel, the last 10 chapters of First Samuel talks about the relationship, some of the things that happened with David's sons. And Second Samuel starts out chapter 1 with his firstborn. Oh, okay. The statement about if I show you my check, if you show me your checkbook, I will know where your heart is. Because what you write checks for show what's important to you. Of course, we have to write checks for our rent or mortgage and our utilities. But if you're writing checks for a lot of stuff versus writing checks, for example, do you tithe or not? Do you write a check to a church? Do you write a check to an organization that is trying to help our country or trying to help the poor? How many times that kind of thing shows up in your checkbook shows that you have a heart for God, a heart to help others, or if you're just selfishly taking care of yourself. Now we know there are basics that have to be in your checkbook, but he was looking for the other things other than the basic necessities of life that we spend money on, because that shows where your treasure is, there your heart is also. If you would rather spend money on helping others, then you treasure others versus spending money at stores and so on. Of course, for a lot of us now, for a lot of people, it means, looking at your credit card statement rather than checkbook. But anyway, back to 1st and 2nd Samuel. David promised Bathsheba that Solomon would be the king after him. And Absalom tricked the people. David was busy, and so Absalom said, "Hey, if you got a fight, come." He went into the gate and he said, "If you need justice, come to me and I'll judge." And he set himself up as judge, and then he eventually got the people's love towards him. He was a very handsome guy, and he set himself up as king, and the people wanted to crown him king instead of David. And yes, James, that's right. And then in 2 Samuel 1, David is dying, and Adonijah decides as the firstborn that he's going to be king. And so he gets the people to crown him. And, Bathsheba comes to David and says, "Wait a minute, didn't you promise that Solomon would be king?" And he said, "Of course I did." "Then why is Adonijah trying to crown him?" The reason I'm telling this story is it's just amazing to me how current the Bible is. It's the things that happened in the Bible. We can see examples of those things happening today. So I'm going to end with Ephesians 6:10. Be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. 2 Timothy 2:3. Endure hardship like a good soldier. And I will leave you for the weekend with 2 Timothy 2 verse 3. Endure hardship like a good soldier. Remember, Larry never got away from his being a Green Beret, and the tenacity he held on to. He would not give up until his very dying breath. I mean, I saw him Friday evening before he died on Sunday afternoon, still on the phone, working with people. And, he fought and worked to the very, very end to try and make a difference. So we need to remember to endure like a soldier. Let's endure like our Green Beret that we loved and appreciated so very much. Anyhow, because this is Larry's channel, and because He did so much to teach us. I think it is really important for us to remember the things that he taught us and the example he set for us. And let's carry on in his name and in his honor, so that, the Lord will be pleased with what we have learned from him and how we go forward. Now, remember, folks, in the description box below, this weekend, you can write letters. There's a whole bunch of ideas of things you can do. Today, you need to be making phone calls to the head of the legislatures in the battleground states. DickMorris.com has the list of who to contact in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And be praying for this legal team, that they will have favor in the courts, and that the courts will stand by the Constitution. I mean, that's what we need most of all, to stand by the Constitution. Get politics out of it, either direction, politics out of it, stand by the Constitution. So, yes, Josephine, very much so. Thank you, guys. Be strong and courageous. Don't give up. We're in this fight to win it, and we are not going to lose hope. God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday. Bye.